Steve Jobs, Part 4, Reinvention, NeXT and Pixar. Being forced out of Apple should have marked the end of Steve Jobs' influence in the technology world. He was young, bruised, and publicly humiliated. Most people would have retreated, stepped back, or faded quietly into the background. But Steve Jobs was not most people. Instead, what followed was one of the most astonishing reinventions in the history of modern business. A period in which Jobs would lay the foundations for the most important innovations of his career. From the wreckage of Apple's rejection came two extraordinary creations, NeXT and Pixar. Jobs left Apple in 1985 with a severance package and a bruised ego, but also with an undimmed desire to build something meaningful. He still believed in the power of computers to transform human creativity. And so, with a small team of loyal engineers, Jobs founded a new company, one that was meant to surpass even Apple in its ambition. He called it NeXT. From the very beginning, NeXT was a study in contrasts: breathtaking vision, meticulous design, and a stubborn disregard for practicality. Jobs wanted to build the perfect computer, not for everyday consumers, but for scientists, researchers, and higher education. A machine of extraordinary power and beauty, a machine that would leapfrog everything else on the market. He poured his perfectionism into every detail. The NeXT computer would have an elegant magnesium case, laser-quality display, advanced operating system, and innovative programming tools. It would be the kind of machine engineers dreamed of using. But achieving this level of perfection came at a cost. Jobs spent lavishly. He demanded custom-designed components. He rejected compromises. He berated suppliers for imperfections invisible to anyone else. His small company burned through millions of dollars as it pursued an uncompromising ideal. NeXT ultimately created an extraordinary product, the NeXT Cube, but it was too expensive, too niche, and too unconventional to succeed commercially. Universities loved the concept, but not the price. And despite the technical brilliance of NeXTSTEP, Jobs found himself struggling to make the company profitable. But even this failure would later become one of the most important building blocks of modern computing. NeXTSTEP would go on to form the technological core of macOS, iOS, and every Apple product built after Jobs' return. Jobs didn't know it yet, but the seeds of his future triumph were already planted inside NeXT design labs. Still, NeXT alone wasn't enough to occupy his restless mind. Around this time, Jobs made a decision that seemed almost impulsive. He purchased a small, struggling graphics division from George Lucas's film studio for $10 million. The company had brilliant engineers, but no viable business model. Jobs didn't fully understand the computer animation industry, nor did he need to. What he recognized was talent. He renamed the company Pixar. At first, Pixar tried to survive by selling high-end graphics hardware. It failed. Then they pivoted to computer animation software. That too struggled. Jobs poured money into the company to keep it alive, sometimes investing more than his advisors believed was sane. For years, Pixar's future was uncertain. Jobs himself considered selling it more than once. But everything changed when a small, experimental team inside Pixar produced a short animated film called Luxo Jr., a playful story about two desk lamps. The short stunned audiences. It was emotional, charming, and technically groundbreaking. It demonstrated something the world had never seen before: pure storytelling through computer animation. Jobs saw the spark. He believed Pixar could become something extraordinary, an animation studio that harnessed technology as art. But the road ahead was long. Pixar struck a partnership with Disney, led by the visionary but hard-nosed Jeffrey Katzenberg. Together, Pixar and Disney embarked on a risky project, the world's first full-length computer-animated feature film. That film was Toy Story. Developing Toy Story pushed Pixar's small team to the edge. Creative disagreements erupted. The story was rebuilt multiple times. Disney wanted changes. Jobs grew impatient. But slowly, steadily, something remarkable took shape. A warm, deeply human story about friendship, identity, and belonging. When Toy Story premiered in 1995, it wasn't merely a success, it was a global phenomenon. Critics hailed it as revolutionary. Audiences fell in love with Woody and Buzz Lightyear, and Pixar, a company that had spent over a decade on the verge of collapse, became the world's most important animation studio overnight. The IPO that followed made Steve Jobs a billionaire many times over, far richer than he had ever been at Apple. Yet beyond the money, Toy Story restored something Jobs had lost: joy. For the first time in years, he wasn't just building machines. He was helping to create stories, characters, emotional experiences. Pixar connected him to artistry in a way no other venture had. Meanwhile, NeXT, despite its commercial struggles, had quietly become essential to many in the tech world. Its operating system was elegant, stable, and innovative. Its development tools were beloved by engineers. And in a twist of fate that neither Jobs nor Apple could have predicted, the two companies were about to collide again. By the mid-1990s, Apple was in crisis. Years of mismanagement, failed products, and internal conflict had pushed the company toward bankruptcy. Desperate for a new foundation for its next operating system, Apple evaluated several options and ultimately turned to NeXT. In December 1996, Apple acquired NeXT for $429 million. And with that deal, Steve Jobs, the man who had been fired from his own company, returned to Apple, not as an engineer, not as a consultant, but as the person Apple needed most. NeXT's technology would become the heart of Apple's future. Pixar had shown Jobs the power of creativity and storytelling, and Steve himself had matured, tempered by failure, loss, and reinvention. He was no longer the volatile young founder chasing perfection. He was something far more dangerous, a visionary with experience. The stage was set for one of the greatest comebacks in business history, and the next chapter of Steve Jobs' life, the rebirth of Apple, was about to begin.